Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Vic, and for today's video, I'm gonna find out once and for all if I still like YA. So that's a very dramatic claim, but the fact of the matter is, I used to exclusively read young adult books. It was my bread and butter, it was everything I loved, and then over the last couple of years, I've really fallen out of love with YA. And that's fine, you know, like that's totally fine. Nobody has to read any one genre. That's not how genres work. I have been reading young adult books for over 10 years, like 15 years actually, and I'm only 24. So that's a lot of years, to be frank. I feel like, for me, personally, it's all started to feel very samey, and I usually want it to go further. If I'm gonna read anything with a romance plot, I want to read something adult now, and I very rarely want to read anything that doesn't have a romance plot. I don't know, I really do love YA in my heart of hearts. I just keep finding myself not enjoying it as much as I used to when I do pick it up. Now, there are always exceptions to this. If you watched my quarterly wrap-up, one of the 3 books that I gave 5 stars in the first quarter was a YA book. Although I will say this, the characters, now that I think about it, were older, but I have read and loved some YA recently, as in the last few years. I read and loved Delirium 2 years ago, which everybody hates that series, so I liked that. I've been reading and loving Heartstopper, that's YA. I've read and loved this author recently. I read these both, I think, in 2022. I read and loved Aiden Thomas and Anna Marie McLemore, A.G. Howard. Those are some big authors for me. So I figured, let's read some of their stuff and see if I still like it. This is a very uncomfortable concept for me, because I do love YA so very much, and I'm just basically saying, hey, but like, what if I don't? And the fact of the matter is, when I go to a bookstore now, if I'm looking at a book and I think it sounds really interesting and I pick it up and it's YA, I put it back down and I don't buy it. And I don't browse the YA section at the library. I just don't. The only YA I engage with is YA that I already own, or if I have to read something for a video and I get an ebook of it or get it out from the library then. But like, I do not tend to gravitate anymore to YA. I haven't looked in the YA section of the bookstore in like a year. It's just not something I do anymore. And a part of me really misses it. And so I want to see, am I still a teenager at heart? Or am I a decrepit old lady who can't enjoy things? So I have a selection of YA books here that I've owned for a stupidly long amount of time. These 2 were pre-orders that came out in 2022, and this one I think I got the year before. But this is Blanca Roja by Anna Marie McLemore. I've read a ton of Anna Marie McLemore stuff. I've read 4 books by this author, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all of them, but like, I keep not picking this up. I want to read this, I think I'll love it, but like, I just don't know. I don't know anymore. What am I doing? So this book follows, oh my god, who are we following? Blanca and Roja are siblings. They're sisters. They know that because of a generations old spell, their family is bound to a bevy of swans deep in the woods. They know that one day the swans will pull them into a dangerous game that will leave one of them a girl and trap the other in the body of a swan. But when 2 local boys become drawn into the game, the swan spell intertwines with the strange and unpredictable magic lacing the woods, and all 4 of their fates depend on facing truths that could either save or destroy them. Swans! This is based on a fairy tale, but I don't know which fairy tale. There are a number of fairy tales that have swan transformations in them, I have to say, and I'm not sure which ones she's drawing on. It could be all of them, it could be none of them. This is one of Anna Marie McLemore's older works. Camera battery is dying, that's just lovely. This is from 2018. I have only heard good things about this. Everybody seems to love it here on BookTube, and I've only just realized that there's a swan head on this cover. Oh, there's 2! I'm stupid, there's swans on this cover. But I'm excited to give this one a go. And then the other 2 are 2022 releases that I was so excited about. I pre-ordered them and then just never read. So one of them is the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. This is the author of Cemetery Boys and Lost in the Neverwoods. 2 books that I gave 5 stars and loved. In fact, are probably some of my all-time favorite books. This one, to be honest with you, even from the get-go, this one didn't intrigue me the way those other two did. This is the first book in a duology, and it's like a fantasy. As each new decade begins, the sun's power must be replenished so that Sol can keep traveling along the sky and keep the chaotic obsidian gods at bay. Sol selects 10 of the most worthy semidioses to compete in the Sunbearer Trials. The winner carries light and life to all the temples of Reino del Sol. I'm saying everything wrong, I'm so sorry. But the loser has the greatest honor of all. They will be sacrificed to Sol, their body melted down to refuel the sunstones, protecting the world for another 10 years. We follow Tio, 17-year-old Jade Semidios, and the trans son of the goddess of birds. And then for the first time in over a century, the impossible happens. Sol chooses not one, but 2 Jade competitors, Tio and Zio, the 13-year-old child of the god of bad luck. Well, now they must compete in 5 trials against gold opponents who are more powerful and better trained. Worst of all, Tio's annoyingly handsome ex-best friend, Aurelio, is favoured to win. Tio is determined to get himself and his friends through the trials unscathed for fame, glory, and their own survival. This sounds very typical of a YA dystopian series, but this time fantasy. Make it fantasy instead of sci-fi, you know? I know I really enjoy this author's writing and characters, so I'm intrigued to read it, but it just sounds kind of weird. And like, I was super excited about it when it was coming out, and now it's been a couple of years and I'm like, I would not pick this up now, but I'm gonna give it a go. And then the final book I have here is Shades of Rust and Ruin by A.G. Howard. A.G. Howard wrote one of my absolute favorite series of all time, the Splintered Trilogy. Love that series. And I've read Roseblood and Stain, also by that author. And this was a new release that I pre-ordered following Phoenix next, who knows her family is under a Halloween curse. I'm reading this at the wrong time of year. When she was 3, her parents tragically died on October 31st. 11 years later, her twin sister Lark suffered a similar fate. Really? Phoenix and Lark? Naming your kids after birds? Nyx battles survivor's guilt. She can't even find comfort in Clary, Lark's boyfriend, and the one person who understands her pain because Nyx's hidden feelings for him go far beyond friendship. Great. All that remains are her sketches, where she finds solace among the goblins and fairies in her imaginary world of Mystique. When her depression starts affecting her ability to see colour, Nyx all but gives up on her art until her uncle goes missing on Halloween Day. Nyx and Clary step through a portal, becoming trapped in a decaying version of their town filled with Nyx's own sketches come to life. Search for her uncle within the sinister and dangerous world of Mystique. Nyx discovers there's more to her family curse and otherworldly artwork than she ever imagined, and unless she can solve the Goblin King's maze before the clock strikes midnight, her life won't be the only one the curse claims. New fantasy is full of romance, twists, and betrayals. This sounds like, just from reading that synopsis, it's pulling from Labyrinth. It's pulling from Mirror Mask. Has anybody seen Mirror Mask? It's fucked. I watched that movie as a kid. I love it. It's so twisted and messed up though, but I love it. It's one of those times where you watch a movie as a kid and you remember it later on and you're like, was that real? Was that a fever dream? And then you find it and you watch it and you go, oh, it was real. So it seems like it's pulling from that as well a little bit with the whole, you know, traveling into the world of your drawings thing. I'm thinking it's pulling off of other things as well that I can't remember at this point in time, but it definitely sounds interesting. I am intrigued by this. I love A.G. Howard. I love all these authors, so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful and I'm scared because if it doesn't go well, I'm gonna be really upset. But I'm gonna read these 3 books to see, once and for all, is it a waste of time for me to buy more YA books? Should I unhaul all the YA books I haven't read? I don't think that'll happen regardless, because there are some that I do desperately want to read still. But this is gonna be my final, do I stop paying attention to YA books? Do I just stop even looking at new stuff and just focus on the things I already know I want to read and then move on? I don't know. We're gonna find out together as I read these 3 books. I will come back to you when I read one of them. I don't know which one. I don't know what I'm starting with, but I will come back when I read one of them.
Do we really have to grow up?
Do I know where this is supposed to sit? No. Normally I try to film these updates like when I finish the first book but before I finish the next one. That didn't happen this time. I've finished both of these, so I'm going to talk about this one first and then I will talk about the other one. So, Blanca Roja by Anna Marie McLemore. What do I say about this? Well, I gave it 3 stars and it was making me feel real concerned about the concept of this video because The first 100 to 150 pages of this, I just didn't care about anything. I felt so detached from everybody. The writing style was just so strange. Anna Marie McLemore writes surrealist fiction, so like this is about people in like the real world who are under threat of turning into swans. It's just, I don't know how to explain this without spoiling things, but it's an oddball. It's an odd one. And I have noticed, I was reflecting as I read this, I've noticed that I don't read a lot of surrealist fiction anymore. I never really did. I started reading like Anna Marie McLemore and YA, Emily Henry, on the tail end of me reading a lot of YA. Yeah, I'm just not a big surrealist person, turns out. I enjoyed the story. Again, it was written in third person and it's very like poetically written. There's a lot of whimsical energy to this, and it just made me feel so detached from absolutely everyone and everything that was going on. It almost felt like I was floating alongside this story and we were shifting through time, like going ahead at awkward paces at times. And I just, honestly, if you ask me how long this story is, like how much time it takes place over, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. The ending was a bit weird. I kind of did expect that though, because that is a thing with Anna Marie McLemore. It's gonna be weird, but I don't know. I've heard so many people sing the praises of this book as their absolute favorite Anna Marie McLemore. It is probably the most highly regarded Anna Marie McLemore, and I'm just like, wasn't that great? I preferred Dark and Deepest Red and The Mirror Season. It wasn't my thing. And I was starting to feel very concerned that this wasn't a this book thing and it was a YA thing. Because it was kind of how I'd been feeling about a lot of YA that I'd been reading before I kind of decided I wasn't going to read YA anymore. Where it's like, parts of it I enjoyed, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I knew I would have if I'd have read this when I was 18, which, ooh, that was 6 years ago. That's upsetting. And it puts me in this frame of mind of, oh, I don't like this anymore. And then I was like, what is the rest of this video gonna be like? Because I did not set out to read 3 books I don't like. And I know I'm sounding like I hated this book. I did give it a 3. It did pick up the pace. I did get more invested in what was going on, but I also never really felt any stakes in this book. This is supposed to have stakes, you know? Who's gonna turn into a swan? What's gonna happen? And I was just sitting there the whole time like I don't want to say too much because spoilers, but while I didn't know how the ending was gonna happen, and it was a lot weirder than I ever could have imagined, it's what I thought would happen. I'm not surprised. And I think I'm supposed to be surprised, but I wasn't. I'm just realizing now that I haven't said a single thing about what this book is about. I know I told you the synopsis earlier. This is a book following Blanca and Roja, who are 2 daughters. They are siblings from this family where every time they have children, they end up with 2 daughters. And because of something that happened with someone in the family way back when, these swans want one of the daughters and always take one of the daughters. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Blanca and Roja obviously don't want to be taken by swans, and they don't want each other to be taken by swans. When I say taken by swans, I mean they get like literally turned into a swan. It's kind of their struggle against this decades, centuries old curse on their family. And these 2 boys from their town become intermingled in the whole thing. It's a lot about sibling friendship and like love between siblings, as well as understanding yourself and coming into your own. I can now tell you what this is pulling from fairy tale wise. It's pulling from Snow White and Rose Red, which is a Grimm's fairy tale. I've read it, can't remember a single thing that happened in that fairy tale, so I was really relying on what the characters were telling me about it in here. There's mentions of the ugly duckling story in here, and I feel like there's another one that they don't explicitly mention in here that just felt so familiar to me, and I cannot for the life of you tell you what it was, because I've read all of Hans Christian Andersen's and the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, and let me tell you, they all start blurring together after a while. But there are a number of fairy tales about people being turned into swans. It's a repeating thing. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I could have lived without reading this. Like, I'm not even gonna sit here and be like, I'm glad I read it, because I'm not really. I feel like I didn't need to. I didn't gain anything from it, and that's quite sad. It was a sad turn of events for that one. So then I was really scared going into the next book because I wanted to like it. And so I thought, let's do a genre shift and do something completely different. So I read The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. Aiden Thomas, once again, knocking it out the park. I have loved every Aiden Thomas I have read. The Cemetery Boys, 5 out of 5 stars. Lost in the, what is it called? Lost in the Neverwoods? 5 out of 5 stars. This one, admittedly, was a 4 out of 5 stars, but I do want to read the sequel. I thought the sequel was out already. It's not. It's not coming out until September. I thought it came out last year, but I guess not. So I can't read it yet, but I actually really enjoyed this. This follows a guy named Tio who is a jade semidios, which means he is basically a demigod. It's some kind of Hispanic influence on this. There's a lot of Hispanic culture and language, and I'm assuming terminology in here. I don't know anything about actual Hispanic culture or anything, so I can't be sure what's made up for this and what's being drawn from reality. I don't know, but it's definitely got an influence there. And so we've got Tio, Jade Semidios. So in terms of the gods, you have the gold ones who are like top tier, best of the best, and their children, the gold Semidioses, are like the heroes, the ones who go to a special academy and do all the cool things. Then you have the Jade Semidioses, who are, well, the Jade gods aren't as cool as the gold gods, so the Jade Semidioses are basically treated like normal people. They go to normal school, they live normal lives, pretty much, but they do have, obviously, some powers inherited from their parents, and they are more than just a human, but they are treated not like heroes that need to be worshipped. And every decade there are the Sunbearer Trials, which are a competition to figure out who is like the best of the best, who's going to be the Sunbearer, and who is not the best of the best and is going to be a sacrifice, literally a sacrifice, to help keep their world protected from these evil forces. It's a whole thing. It's always golds who are selected for the Sunbearer Trials. It's always golds. Until now, Tio got selected, and so did another Jade Semidios. So Tio and his friend Naya, who is a gold Semidios, work together to help each other and this other Jade Semidios, Zio? I'm giving you a lot of synopsis for this one. I didn't give you any synopsis for the other one. I finished this yesterday. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. The humor in this book was kind of giving Percy Jackson vibes, but I don't really want to compare it to Percy Jackson because it's not the same thing at all. And I know when people start talking about like the Children of Gods and comparing it to Percy Jackson, it starts feeling very like samey, and then you're like expecting it to be Percy Jackson. It's not Percy Jackson. The trials remind me a lot of almost Hunger Games-esque, but also it's like a reality TV show vibe. It's not a reality TV show, although it's kind of a reality TV show. Like, it's televised, but like it feels like it's a reality TV show. It's so weird. I loved the humor in this. There's a lot of good representation in here. Tio is trans. There's a lot of queer and gender diverse representation in Aiden Thomas's books, and I think that's really cool. I think there needs to be more of that, and I'm really excited to read the next one. One thing I noticed while I was reading this is there's no romance in this. Like, it hints at like some feelings that exist, but there's no actual romance in this book, and it didn't bother me, which I know that seems like a weird thing to comment on, but I very much read books that have romance subplots. Like, it's almost a must-have for me in order to enjoy a book. I'm just a hopeless romantic and I want romance and everything. This didn't have romance in it, and I didn't even notice until I'd finished the book and I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, literally nothing happened. And it didn't take away from my enjoyment of this book, so that's good. I have looked at the synopsis for the sequel, there's gonna be romance in that one, and I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. I really enjoyed a lot of what this book did. I'm definitely gonna keep reading Aiden Thomas going forward. I knew I loved Aiden Thomas in the past, but I was really worried that that wasn't gonna be a continuing feeling, but I loved this. This was really good, and I would recommend it, and I definitely want to keep an eye on what Aiden Thomas is doing in the future. Thank God for that. I needed a win for this video because I was really starting to be worried that things were not gonna go well. But now I have to read Shades of Rest and Ruin, and I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm scared. It's gonna be a time. I just filmed another video, but I need to finish this video. I finally read it. Oh my god, I've been working on this video for like 2 months. A lot of my videos got put on hold. I don't know if you noticed I didn't upload for like 3 weeks. Please excuse the delay. I finished Shades of Rust and Ruin by A.G. Howard, and I enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 3 stars. It's probably more like a 3.5, but I don't do decimals because that gets confusing and you can't do it on Goodreads. So what is this book about? It's been so long since I talked about it at the start that I don't know if anyone remembers. We follow Phoenix, or Nyx, whose family keeps dying on Halloween. Her parents died when she was 3, and her sister died I think 3 years ago. And she has felt such bad survivor's guilt ever since, and she has a very big fear of the date 31st of October because everybody just keeps dying. So she lives with her uncle and she's really struggling. She has not coped well with all of this loss. She hasn't really grieved properly. She hasn't moved through the phases of grief. She's a very troubled person. She draws. She's an artiste. She draws graphic novels of this world Mystiquel, which is full of goblins and fae, and like, it's a very creative place. And one Halloween, it's here. Why is the Mystiquel crossing into the real world? What's going on? And her friend Clary, who used to go out with her sister Lark, and she has a thing for him, but like she feels like she's not allowed to because he went out with her sister who is now dead, and she's like, that's a big betrayal, I can't do that, and it's like a whole thing. This explanation is a mess. Have to go through Mystiquel to find her uncle who goes missing on Halloween. I feel like, having finished this now, I can say that, I think I said this at the start as well, I can say it with definitivity now. This book gives me Labyrinth crossed with Mirror Mask. If you don't know what Mirror Mask is, I don't blame you. Does anyone else know that movie, or is it just me? But it's a movie where this girl, she makes all these drawings and then she falls into the world of her drawings and has to figure out how to get back out to help her mum. It's very much giving those vibes. I really liked Nyx as a character. I think she had a lot to work through in this book. I liked Clary as well. He was great. I loved their dynamic. I do think A.G. Howard does a really good job of writing friends with romantic tension. Is something that happens in a lot of her books, and I just enjoy it every time. I do really like A.G. Howard. I loved the world that this kind of created. It was kind of giving similar vibes to Splintered by the same author. I love it so much, and I feel like if I had read this book at the same time that I read those, I would be obsessed with this. This book wasn't out then. I'm older now and I feel like I just want something more from it. I don't know. That's the annoying thing. This is the kind of book that I'm talking about when I'm talking about my struggle with YA. Yes, I really enjoyed this. Yes, I'm gonna read the sequel, but I know I would have loved it more 4 years ago. That's really frustrating. I feel like I can see how much I would enjoy something that I'm not. There were multiple times while reading this where I thought, you don't have to spell things out that much to me. And I don't actually think this author was doing that in excess. I think this author was doing it to the right level for the target demographic. It's just that I'm reading stuff now that has hidden depth to it that isn't blatantly explained to you, whereas this book kind of explains it to you. I didn't really feel like there was as much danger. I do feel like there is actual weight to the things happening in A.G. Howard books because stuff happens in her books that actually impacts the characters long term. But I kind of know how this whole thing is going to end at the end of book 2. Like, obviously I don't know the actual plot points that are going to happen, but I can guess how everyone's going to be at the end. Because I've just read so much YA, and YA does kind of follow certain beats, you know, it has a similarity among the whole age group category for literature. It's just, I'm sorry, I've read so much YA, I can say that. I'm not just generalizing. I mean, I am generalizing, there are always exceptions, but it's something I've read so much of that it doesn't surprise me anymore. There were plot twists in this, a lot of them I saw coming. Some I didn't see coming, but I still wasn't surprised. Like, I was never shocked by what I was reading or finding out in this book. I don't get that feeling from YA anymore. It doesn't do that for me anymore, and that is so upsetting. I am glad that I read this. I'm excited for the second book to come out. Apparently it's only coming out this year, which is odd because this one came out in 2022, and I thought that authors were on the whole publish a series, one book a year thing. Is that not a thing anymore? What's with all these books that came out multiple years ago that I'm only reading now and their sequels are only coming out this year? That's 2 in this one video alone. But yeah, I did really enjoy this. I would recommend this. I think a lot of people would really love it. I really enjoyed the exploration of imagination and how your mental state impacts your creativity and what you produce. I think this did a good job of exploring aspects of grief that are often not chosen to portray to youth. I really did enjoy this. I make it sound like I didn't, but I did. I really enjoyed it. I was wanting to pick it up while I was reading it, which was nice. I guess it's time for the conclusion portion of this video to figure out what I've learned. Oh no.
I used to be young.
So I've read these 3 books now. Blanca Roja by Anna Marie McLemore, The Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas, and Shades of Rust and Ruin by A.G. Howard. 3 YA books from authors that I have absolutely loved in the past to try and figure out, do I still like YA? Do I even still like YA? And I think the answer to that question is yes, if it's the right book. It's not a genre that I enjoy extensively anymore, but it's when I'm super connected to the characters, when I'm really invested in relationships and like friendships in the books, that I can really get into it. But as a whole, I don't think YA is for me anymore. I'm not gonna go into a bookstore or something and browse the YA section. I'm not gonna do it. But if I hear about a book and I think it sounds interesting and find out that it's YA, I'm not gonna not read it just because it's YA. I'm not gonna avoid young adult literature, but I'm not going to seek it out. That is what I have learned from this experience. I am interested in what A.G. Howard does in the future. I definitely want to finish this. I think it's just gonna be a duology, so that won't be hard to finish. I will not be reading more Anna Marie McLemore. I think I've just moved past the stage in my life where this author did it for me. I don't read a lot of surrealist fiction anymore, which is very much what this is. I don't know if that's so much because it's YA thing or because it's magical realism. I couldn't tell you, but I just know that I'm not gonna pick up future Anna Marie McLemore books at this stage. I'm not gonna say never. Aidan Thomas, however, I do think I will keep an eye on what this author publishes going forward. There is a book on their website and on Goodreads that is supposed to be coming out in 2024. That was the expected release, but there's been no title, no cover, no real synopsis, and no release date announced at the time of me recording this. So I don't think it's coming in 2024, but it's been pitched. It says Gay Titanic in Space, and I need that in my life. And for Aidan Thomas to be the one writing it, I know it's gonna be good. So I do want to read that at the very least. Yeah, I think I can still have fun with YA, and there are definitely still young adult books that I own that I want to read, but I do think it's kind of time for me to let go of it as my genre. You know, it's not anymore. I think I've kind of already done that, and I was just having a crisis about it and needed to clarify it to myself and prove it to myself that it's time to move forward. I'm a different person now at 24 than I was at 9 when I started reading YA books, you know? A lot has happened in my life. And I do tend to want to read books that are about characters who are my age or older. I've always been like that. That's why I started reading YA at 9. Over half of my life I have read young adult books as my go-to. It was what I would seek out anywhere I went that had books. That was all I would look at. Now I don't even look there at all, but I'm still interested in YA. YA will still show up in my reading. It'll be significantly more limited, let's put it that way. I'm reading a lot of different things at the moment. I feel like I have probably the widest range of what I'm reading at the moment. It's just that because I'm reading so much, I'm reading like a lot of certain genres, but I'm still reading other genres as well. And it's really fun. I haven't been this, I guess, exploratory with my reading in years because I was so dead set that I loved YA and I would explore within it, but it's been so long since it's felt like I'm reading different stuff because it all kind of has a similar vibe within YA. And now I'm just trying all these different kinds of books and genres, and I'm falling in love with different kinds of things that I never would have read before, and I'm so excited about it. I'm not saying goodbye to young adult books forever. I'm just saying that they aren't the biggest slice of my reading anymore. It's really weird to say that. I moved into a different era of my reading after being in the same era of my reading for a long time. I'm making this a very big thing. It doesn't need to be. I had a good time with this video. I am glad that I read these books. I think it was a worthwhile experience to just kind of make a concentrated effort to focus on the genre and be like, is this what I still want to be reading? I think sometimes I have to do that or I don't get an answer. That's all for me today. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. I do try to post every week. I have a lot of fun video concepts planned and there's quite a few on my channel already if you want to check them out. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Let me know what you think about YA books, if you read them, if you don't, if you do or don't, why. If there's any genres that you feel you're growing out of, or if there's any books you would like me to read or anything you would like to see a video on, don't hesitate to make a suggestion. And I hope I get to see you all next time in my next video. But until then, goodbye.